So nothing annoys me more than I'm sure there's other things that annoy me more than this, but it certainly annoys me. We speak about Israel and the chaos that the Israelis, are causing, not just in the Middle East, but around the world, and them infiltrating a lot of countries. They've infiltrated South Africa, and there's a real attempt to further infiltrate South Africa. It's a little different. It's a little bit difficult for them. It's a different territory here, unlike America, and they've completely infiltrated America. Zionists rule America essentially, and they've done that by buying politicians. I mean, most Congress people, most politicians in the United States are bought by these Zionists and the Israeli government. So, and whenever I listen to certain people talk about their support for Israel, nothing annoys me more than when they use the biblical lines and the biblical, perspective of why they have to support the state of Israel. I mean, I was listening to there was an interview between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz. Obviously, this is in the United States, and we see a lot of that even in South Africa. But this was a very clear example, right? And it's relevant elsewhere as well. So Ted Cruz makes the point that he feels this religious and this theological and this moral duty to defend Israel because the Bible says those who bless Israel shall be blessed, right? I'm no theologian, but what I do understand, I may not quote the Bible from cover to cover, but I do understand some things and I understand history. The Bible is not a fairy tale story. It's largely a historical book as well. So this is history. And we need to understand and this is the confusion, and that's what we want to do. We want to just clear out the confusion. A lot of South Africans, a lot of Africans, a lot of Americans seem to confuse the biblical Israel with the modern day state of Israel. They can't differentiate between an Israelite and an Israeli. These are two different groups of people. The Israelites, as the theologians, and we need to allow the theologians to walk us through, but the Israelites, these are the biblical Jews. These are the descendants of Jacob. They are in the Bible, and we know the history there biblically. And they live in this promised land after leaving, after living, escaping living under the foot of, the Pharaoh, and having escaped that to the promised land, and they live in the promised land, and these are the chosen people of God. Chosen because these are the people who are awaiting the Messiah, Jesus Christ, and Jesus God would become flesh, will become man, and will be among these people. These are truly blessed and chosen people of God, and we believe that theologically. We believe that as Christians, those who are Christians, and Muslims also, we believe this. Some Muslims at least, we believe this, and then we seem not to get how we move from that, which was more than 2,000 years ago, to the modern day Israel. We seem to lose each other somewhere in the line. In the 1930s, even before that actually, in Europe, Jews were not liked. No one liked Jews. They were hated. I mean, the Germans took it really far. They massacred them. They say 6 million. We'll take that figure, right? That's a figure we've been told and taught. We'll take it, even if it was 1,500,000. Doesn't matter. What matters is a number, a huge number of Jews were killed in Germany. Not just Germany, they were abused elsewhere as well. These were Europeans, white people in Europe. They weren't liked. No one liked them because they were Jews, and they liked money. They did all these things. They had no sense of, they owed the banks. They charged large interest. They had no sense of patriotism in Europe. People didn't like them, and I'm not saying those things justify the violence inflicted on them. It doesn't. But the picture I'm painting is that these were white Europeans that were hated, mistreated, and killed in Europe. What happened after that? They left Europe, got on a ship, went to a place called Palestine around 1945, after the war. All right, so the UK facilitated that. They were on a ship. They went to this place called Palestine, and they had banners saying, "Please take us in. The Europeans have killed us. Take us in, please. We need a place to stay. We can't stay in Europe." What did the Palestinians say? The Palestinians said, "Come in. Yes, you need a place to stay. Come. Build your house here. Raise your families here. If the Europeans don't want you, if the Europeans are mistreating you, come. Come here and let's stay in Palestine." What then did they do? They started taking over. This was before 1945, by the way. 1945, it started being 1940s, 45, 48. They started cementing themselves. Then they said, "You know what? We're comfortable here. Actually, we are Jews, and historically and biblically, actually, we were given this piece of land. We were given and promised this piece of land. So we want statehood." The UK then facilitates that for them. They carve out the Palestinian land, and they say, "Here's your state. What are you going to call your state?" They said, "You know what? We're going to call it Israel." They're using the biblical name. And then it instantly confuses people because they choose the name Israel. The location is where the tribe or the people of Israel lived. And that caused a whole lot of confusion later on. That's the same confusion we have today. These are Europeans, white Europeans with no connection to that land and to that people. Those Israelites, biblical Israelites, they're not there today in a sense of them being Jews living there and, as living up their religion and so on. They're not there. Some of them became Muslims later on. Some of them became Muslims later on. Some became Christians later on. But they lived there. These ones are Europeans who had taken the Jewish faith, taken Judaism, and then they came to Palestine and they forced themselves to create a state. Once they created the state with the backing of Europe at the time, the UK, they started expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding and pushing the Palestinians out. Again, what they've done there is what they continue to do in other places. That's what they want to do in South Africa as well. Mind you, and this is an important point, when these not Israelis at the time, but these European Jews, when they were thinking about a homeland, Palestine wasn't the only option. No. Uganda was an option. Remember, Uganda wasn't even independent at the time, it was, I think, a British territory. They said, okay, no, we can go to Uganda and we can have a homeland in Uganda. Say, nah. Uganda is no good. What about South Africa? Yes, they thought about South Africa was considered. Could this place be ideal for a Jewish homeland? And then finally they said, you know what? Palestine, because we can use the Bible as a justification. And they agreed. And they took them to Palestine. They begged the Palestinians. Palestinians welcomed them in. They went to Palestine and they started pushing the Palestinians out. Europeans has nothing to do with the Israelites. Anyway, we can debate, but I know at least theologically, I'm no theologian, but I know this much, that the new Israel is the church. That's the new Israel. That's the new covenant. Those are the people that have accepted the Messiah. So the church actually is the one with, I believe, a theological claim over what is Israel. Not these white Europeans who took the name Israel to confuse people. Palestine wasn't even their first option. It's just the option they settled in. So now we are fighting and we're saying, no, we must defend Israel because they're the chosen people of God. No. These are Jews who their current position right now is that Jesus Christ or Jesus was a troublemaker who was killed for his trouble. While you have the Muslims who say, actually, Muslims who, unlike the Jews, the Muslims at least admit that Jesus was the greatest human being to have ever walked the earth. These are Muslims who believe that. Yeah, we disagree with the Muslims. I disagree with them theologically. But they at least acknowledge that. These Jews that we are saying now we want to defend, this Israel that we are saying we want to defend, don't even recognize Jesus at all. So even theologically, it doesn't make sense to me. Historically, it's wrong. These are two different kinds of people. I mean, listen, and this is going to be a risky point that I'm going to raise, but I'm going to raise it anyway. If you look at the Middle East, the people in the Middle East look a certain way. You know, they look a certain way. These are Arabs. They're brown. They're brown people. Some are lighter skin, but they're not white. And then you have a small place called Palestine, Israel, where you have these white European. How did you get there? Has anyone not started to say, why are you the only white people in a region full of brown people? It's because they migrated there on ships, on vessels. There are pictures. We've seen this. This is historic. Didn't happen 1,000 years ago. This happened 100 years ago, which in terms of history is not that long ago. If you think about it, your grandparents' parents were very much alive when this happened. Some of your grandparents may have been alive when the state of Israel was formed. The state of Israel, by the way, was not formed 2,000 years ago. The state of Israel was formed in 1948. Do you know what else was formed in 1948? The apartheid government in South Africa. Apartheid became a policy legally recognized in South Africa in 1948. The same year, Israel became a state. So it's important for us to reflect on these things. So if you're a Christian, you need to sit down and think about this. Are these the same Israelis? Are these the same Israelites? Are these Israelis the same as those of the Bible? You know, if I went to Israel and I said, you know what, I want to become a Jew, they will say, I also have a claim in that land. Are you then gonna, would that make me an Israelite? If so, then why don't you all just convert and become Jews? So it makes absolutely no sense. There is a difference. There are Israelites and then there are Israelis. The Bible does not say we need to bless Benjamin Netanyahu. The Bible does not say anything about the state of Israel, which was formed in the late 1940s. It says nothing about those. It says a lot about the Israelites. They just took the name to confuse you. Now you think it's the same thing. It's not. Now you're looking at kids being killed, bombed, and you say, no, I have to stand. You don't have to stand with these people. These are vicious people. And they have nothing to do with Christianity or God. And in actual fact, they are in excess of evil. So that's what I wanted to talk about, to say, listen, Christians, I know you're genuine in your faith, but you have to be wary of some of these things. So thank you very much. Let us continue having this conversation and more conversations again. That's just what I wanted to talk about today.